Hey folks, I wanted to talk to you today about 3 reasons why people don't use consequences with their dogs, or punishment, or corrections. Now, this could be as simple as just setting a boundary and the dog's scratching at the door and you go, nope, I'm not letting you out the door, and you close the door and you walk away. This could be as simple as, your dog's being pushy, your dog's being annoying. Nope, you ignore them. You don't give them any attention. Or even, nope, and I put them in the crate and I put them away. It could also be something like the dog's barking or crying. I say no, and I squirt them with a squirt bottle. I say no, and then I shake a can full of pennies. I say no, and then I use the remote collar or a prong collar to let them know that I would like them to stop this behavior in the future. Okay, what are the reasons why people don't do this? The first reason that I see is that emotionally we lack objectivity with our dogs. It's very hard for us to take a step back and to separate ourselves emotionally from our dog. And although our dog may be stressed because, they really want to come out and we're not going to let them out, and now we hear them on the other side of the door and they're crying or they're whining, it's hard for us to take a step back and go, look, I understand the dog is stressed right now. How do I feel right now? Hey, yes, I feel that my dog is stressed, but I also feel good about setting a boundary with my dog and being clear that I am the parent and that I deserve respect. I deserve a dog that's going to be attentive to me. It's very easy to emotionally see a dog appear to be nervous or see a dog crying and to get overwhelmed with a feeling of empathy or a feeling of compassion for that dog and to immediately want to rescue them or remove whatever stress it is they're facing. And what we see is, if we've done that with our dog over and over again, where they've gotten overwhelmed, they've gotten stressed, we just make it easy for them, we see that not only does the dog not understand how to overcome stressful things, but we don't have that experience of, putting the dog in the crate, they're crying, we do not rescue them, we come back 2 hours later, the dog is completely content, completely fine. We do that 3 or 4 times. In a week's time, we notice the dog is completely fine in their crate. They're not stressed at all. We then understand, if I help the dog work through difficulty, the dog will actually be more calm, more confident, and more relaxed. So this lack of emotional objectivity, the ability to take a step back and kind of separate ourselves from our dogs emotionally, is one of the reasons I see people really struggling to set boundaries with their dogs or have consequences, a punishment with their dog. The next reason that I see is that people have gotten information from other people, or maybe the internet, maybe trainers, that don't have the same dog that they have. Or perhaps got that dog when it was 8 weeks old. And so, let's say you go to the shelter, or let's say you just get Bear Cub, this yellow lab here. He is an extremely strong-willed Labrador. He is very nice and very sweet. But he is the type of dog that if you wanted to go duck hunting in the winter, he would have no problem jumping in the ice-cold water to get the ducks. He wouldn't think twice about it, okay? Sky here, the black lab, was much more compliant and much more easy to train from the time she was young. Even though Sky's a rescue that they got at 1 year old, she just has a much more mellow temperament. She is much more easygoing. And also, she's just a lot more sensitive. If you tell her no, or you create some sort of consequence, she's very quick to say, oh man, they don't want me to do that. She's also very eager to please. And so if you had a dog like, Sky, it would be understandable that you see somebody like with Bear Cub and they're being really strict with him, or they're setting a lot of boundaries, maybe they're using a remote collar or a prong collar. You might think, well, that's crazy. I didn't have to use this with my dog. Well, the reality is your dogs are very different here. And, with time, actually what happened with Sky is we found, even though she was quite easy, there were certain limitations with her. Like, we couldn't get her to come back off leash when there were birds flying around. We couldn't get her to stop barking at the back fence. And so, maybe you have a dog that you don't let off leash. Maybe you don't have neighbors that have goats, so your dog doesn't bark in the backyard. And so the idea of using a remote collar or a shock collar on this black lab here would seem crazy to you. Like, why would you do that? I got a dog, it doesn't bark in the backyard. I got a dog, it doesn't not come back when it's off leash. Well, maybe, you don't let the dog off leash. So what we see is a comparison of ourselves to other people, and what we see is people looking online also and hearing about things or reading articles, where people are saying, hey, look, you don't need to do this. It could be done another way. Creating consequences or boundaries with your dog is actually bad. It's actually going to have really bad consequences. And what we see, though, is really a lack of video evidence for this. There is a lot of claims online. All this can be done without any consequences. All this can be done without any punishment, without any training tools. But what we don't actually see is the video evidence. I don't see a person with, these dogs trained in this way, and I don't see a video of the dog before, pulling on the leash like a complete maniac, lunging aggressively, and then a video afterwards of the dog walking really calmly in a high distraction environment. Typically, the videos we see that are emphasizing this idea of not using consequences, they're filmed in a controlled environment. They don't show a dog out in the real world, and typically the types of dogs that they're showing are your Australian Shepherds, your Border Collies, German Shepherds, dogs that are very easy to train with food. So comparing ourselves to other people or reading things on the internet about what should be possible or what science says is true can really undermine our relationship with our dog and our ability to have consequences, because not only are we struggling with, hey, I don't know, man, maybe I should set a consequence and just not open the crate door, or maybe I should just get a bark collar. But then we go online and somebody's saying that's not necessary. You don't ever need a bark collar. And we read that and we go, okay, they said you don't need a bark collar, but we don't know what kind of dog they have or how much work they've done with their dog. The final reason I see people struggling with consequences with their dog, I believe it's because they themselves maybe never had an experience of someone giving fair consequences, punishment, or correction. Maybe they grew up in a household where mom or dad didn't spend enough time playing with them and having fun, but then would come home and be really strict. Maybe they grew up in a household where mom or dad didn't set any boundaries and was never strict. And so they never understood, hey, it can actually feel very loving when a parent has the ability to set boundaries and say to us, hey, look, I know you really want to do this. I know you're going to be disappointed. And hey, I'm going to be disappointed for you too, But right now, I'm not going to be able to give you the thing that you want, because if I give it to you, I am not going to be setting you up for success as a parent. And so I think, whether that's in society, our boss, law enforcement, parents, maybe we've seen somebody else raising their child away or seen someone raise their dog a certain way, it creates kind of an emotional trauma almost within us, or an emotional limitation where we're not able to understand and feel good about setting boundaries, because we've never had that experience, like I did, where I grew up, my mom set boundaries. Sometimes she did go overboard, but as we grew up and we became adults, we were able to talk to mom and say, hey mom, that was not really fair when you did that. And mom was able to go, you're right. And as a result, that's why I took it easy. I stopped being so strict after that time. Don't you remember that? And I go, oh yeah, that's totally true. So, whatever the reason is, I think it's important to have these conversations. I think it's important to really think about these things. If you are struggling with your dog, if you are putting in a lot of work, if you are finding yourself frustrated and, you're wondering, why are people saying that consequences work or punishment work or these tools work, but yet I myself am finding it very difficult to embrace this philosophy or to begin to, initiate this process of setting boundaries or consequences or even, corrections for my dog. So just something to think about, folks. The 3 reasons why we don't set boundaries with our dogs, or 3 reasons that I can think of right now. So as always, folks, we don't blame them, we train them. If you ever want my help, you can always find me on my website, and you can hire me there for remote sessions, or come over here to Santa Barbara. We'll train in person. Also, you can find my poetry book available there, and see me on all social media platforms. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. Remember, folks, as always, we don't blame them, we train them.